much, Claire. And thank you all for coming. I think this is going to be a bit challenging with a bit of the background noise. So hands up if you're listening. Who's listening? Fantastic. Well done. Thank you so much for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you about future you. But more specifically, what I'm going to talk to you about is being kinder to the future you. Because the world can be an unkind place, and a little bit of kindness could take us a long way. So, we're not going to have time for questions after this session, but I do want your participation. I don't want to be doing this alone. So you can be kind to me, and when I ask you a question, help me out. Okay, deal? Let's start with this lovely picture of the Great Wall of China. Now, I've never been to the Great Wall of China, but I have driven past a sign 4 times in Beijing which says Great Wall of China this way. Didn't quite get to it though. Who has been to the Great Wall of China? Anybody? Lucky people, it's on my bucket list. I do know some facts about the Great Wall of China though. I know, for example, that it's 13,000 miles long. That's a big wall, even by Trump standards, wouldn't you agree? And parts of it are 3,000 years old. So it's an old, big wall. And another fact that I know, and I'm sure we've all heard this one, the Great Wall of China is the only man-made thing that we can see from space. Anybody heard that fact? Good, because it's not true. That's the thing about facts. We have to check them, don't we? So let's have some fun with some more facts. Let's start with this one. Sunflowers. Now, we all know this one. Sunflowers, when the sun comes up, they track their beautiful heads with the sun across the sky each day, don't they? We all know that one. Here's another one. Let's stay with the sun as a theme. We all know that the Earth orbits around the sun, doesn't it? Sure, we all know that. That's a good fact. And here's another one. I love this picture. In the old days, we were shorter, weren't we? You only need to look at the medieval walls and the low doorways to know that one. So here's where you're going to help me out. One of these isn't true. I'm not going to ask you which one isn't true, though. I'm just going to ask you which one you feel most strongly is true. Okay? So here we have them, 1, 2, or 3. Who believes that sunflowers track the sun across the sky? Hands up. Got a few there? Okay. Who believes number 2, that the Earth orbits around the sun? Few more? I think that's got a few more votes. And who believes we were all a bit shorter a long time ago? Oh dear. None of them are true. Now, I bet some of you are going, I know it's true. I've seen the sunflowers move their hair. I know that the Earth revolves around the sun. Come and see me afterwards. I checked my facts. I do know these ones because I know that it's really important to check the facts behind our beliefs. Because that's the thing, isn't it? Facts and beliefs aren't the same thing. Let me tell you a fact about me. Where's David? You're going to laugh at this one, David, because you won't believe it. A fact about me is that I believed wholeheartedly for about 15 years, more, 20 years, that I am rubbish at maths. Terrible, 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 terrible at maths. I would avoid spreadsheets. I would go blind when the numbers came in front of me. I would refuse to manage a budget. I would avoid any high-stakes finance meetings. I was just rubbish at maths. Well, was that a belief or was it a fact? Shush, David, I can see you moving your mouth. There is a fact in there. The fact is I failed my 11 plus. Who here remembers the 11 plus? You've just shown your age. The 11 plus was a very important exam back in the olden days. And it was important because it dictated which secondary school you had access to. Now, my parents didn't expect me to fail my 11 plus. think they were a bit disappointed because we had a high stakes meeting with my primary school teacher. I can't remember her name, but I can see her face very vividly, where my parents wanted to know, why did Elise fail her 11 plus and what are we going to do now because the school that she was destined to go to don't want her. Oh dear. What my primary school teacher said next crafted this belief that I held dearly for 20 years. Elise isn't very good at maths. It's her maths that held her back. She failed her 11 plus because the questions were quite hard this year in maths, and Elise didn't cut the mustard. She wasn't very good. She did try though, she just can't do maths. And I believed that. I believed it for years. I believed it actually until a conversation that I had with my very first business coach, Maxine, absolutely wonderful lady. I was in my early 30s and I was part of a HiPo program. High potential, you get all these wonderful things like business coaches to help you out. Maxine was my business coach and she was helping me because she could see that I was holding myself back. She could see that I was sabotaging my career and she couldn't work out what it was. She kept questioning me. Why are you sabotaging your career? Why are you playing it small? Why are you holding yourself back, Elise? And in the end, I cracked. I said, Maxine, there's something I've got to tell you. I've got a horrible secret. I am terrible at maths. And she kind of looked at me and she said, I find that very hard to believe, given the position that you're in. I said, I know. I'm faking it. And she said, okay, well, how many people are in your team, Elise? I said, I was the CMO of a business division within Thomson Reuters. It was about $300, $400 million in revenue. I had about 6 people on my team. I said, 6, Maxine. She said, how much money do they leave you responsible for in marketing each year? And I said, well, my marketing budget this year is 11 million. And she said, you're launching a big campaign next month, aren't you? How much are you spending on that? I said, I'm absolutely bricking myself because we are spending $6 million in 1 week. I am so scared because I am rubbish at maths. I'm so scared I'm going to mess this up, Maxine. And she said, I understand you're scared, but let's look at the facts. Would a company like Thomson Reuters really entrust you to spend $6 million in a week if they believe that you are rubbish at maths? Does your boss believe you're rubbish at maths? I said, no. Christ, no. I've been hiding it from him for years. Of course he doesn't know I'm rubbish at maths. And she said, do you really think that your boss is waiting to hear your opinion on whether you're good at maths or not? What he's doing is looking at the evidence, Elise. He's not hanging around waiting to see whether you're going to own up to being good or bad at maths, because maybe he doesn't care about your opinion, he cares about your performance, and he would not be entrusting you with $6 million to spend in a week if he believed that you are rubbish at maths. And that conversation changed my belief about whether I was rubbish at maths or not. Because you see, the thing is, there was a fact in there. I did fail my 11 plus. But that 11-year-old girl had taken that on board to the degree that she was constantly reinforcing that over the next 20 years until she believed that to be the truth. Because that is what happens. That is what happens when we suffer from what I call the inner critic. And one form of the inner critic is imposter syndrome. And the thing is, I believe we all suffer from imposter syndrome. I believe we all have these voices in our heads telling us our deepest, darkest fears are true, over and over and over again. And I know I'm not alone because there's been an awful lot of research on it. In fact, the research tells us that on an average day, an average person has about 60,000 thoughts in a day. And of those 60,000 thoughts, 80% of them are repetitive. They're saying the same thing over and over again. And 70% of those thoughts are negative. So we're saying the same negative thought over and over and over again. And that's how my belief that I'm rubbish at maths became so ingrained in my psyche. until Maxine, in half an hour, managed to dismantle that belief, and I started to build a different set of beliefs. So, I think we all suffer from imposter syndrome. But let's have some fun with this. Who here is in a salaried job? That wonderful position of being paid every month for turning up. Great, I was in that position, I miss it. So, have any of you who are in salaried jobs had some of these thoughts? I wonder why they hired me. I'm not up to this job. I'm going to get the sack. When they find out, I'm a fake. I'm an imposter. I'm not creative. I can't manage this team. Maybe I'm rubbish at maths. Do you want to add some of your own? We've all had them, haven't we? Who here runs their own business, an entrepreneur? I'm in that team now. Scary when it's all down to you, isn't it? Maybe you have imposter syndrome in a slightly different way, because you might even have imposter syndrome on behalf of your own small business. Maybe you think we're not good enough to compete with the big boys. They're not going to buy from us. They're better than we are. They're cheaper than we are. They're faster, smarter than we are. Or maybe you doubt your own business decision making. Should I have made that decision? Was that price right? Could I have gone higher? I think we all have imposter syndrome. And I did look for some evidence of that. Beyond the research that I did, I looked for the oldest cited evidence that I could find, written fact, not a belief, that imposter syndrome has been going on forever. So who's read Grapes of Wrath or seen the film? Okay, so John Steinbeck wrote the Grapes of Wrath, and in 1938, he won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction for that book. But in a diary, a journal that he wrote a year earlier, there was an entry which said in block capitals, "I can't write. I'm fooling myself and everyone else. I should just give up." That was the oldest evidence that I could find. But I know that imposter syndrome and our inner critic goes way back beyond that. It goes way back to caveman days, frankly, because our inner critic is really just there not to beat us up, not to make us feel bad, not to, ruin our day and destroy our self-confidence, although all of those things are true if we allow that to happen. Our inner critic is there to keep us safe. Our inner critic wants us to stay small, and it dates way back to caveman days when, frankly, we might have been better off staying inside the cave, because at least inside the cave you weren't going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or bitten by a snake or, beaten up by your Neanderthal neighbour. Inside the cave, as long as you had food and water and a source of heat, you were going to be safe. But the thing is, we're not in caves anymore. And staying inside our cave is not where we're going to have the best career, the best fun, the best life. We need to get outside of our cave. We need to have the freedom and allow ourselves to step into our full potential. And if we constantly keep listening to this nagging, negative voice inside our head, that's going to hold us back. And I'll tell you something else about that negative voice. It doesn't get easier as you get more senior. Now, maybe you might think that constant promotion and accolades for your performance might make you get rid of this negative voice. I don't believe that's true, because I know that in the last corporate job that I was interviewing for, I had terrible inner critic. I was interviewing for the CMO role for a part of Thomson Reuters, $1 billion revenue business. I was up against two guys. I know, I stalked them. I thought they were better than me, but I was determined to get the job anyway. I went through about 6 rounds of interviews, panel discussions, psychometric tests. Didn't think I was going to get the job at all, but I did. But do you know what my inner critic told me the moment I got the news that I got the job? They've only given it to you because you're the only female. and they want a woman on the executive team. Before I'd even started the job, I was sabotaging myself. And I think that we do that all the time, and I think we need to be kinder to ourselves. So, when we hear doubts are calling, what's the best thing that we can do? Because we've already established it's going to happen to all of us. We've already established you can't avoid it. And we've already established you want to get out of the cave. You don't want to answer those doubts with, okay, I'll stay small. I'll play it small. I'll stay inside my comfort zone. You don't want to do that. So what can you do instead? The first tip that I have for you, and I have 3, but the first tip that I have for you is to share your fears. I don't think I had honestly told anybody before I told Maxine that I thought I was rubbish at maths. I'd kept it to myself. I didn't want anybody to know. It might be true. And if I talked about it, wouldn't that make it more real? That's not the case. When you share your fears, your inner fears, your doubts, you kind of take their power away. Because by saying them, you realise how ridiculous they can be. And if you share them with somebody who is kind and who you trust, then they will tell you how ridiculous they are. So I would love each of us to be kind to our future selves tonight. You've all got post-it notes, I think, in your bags or on your chairs. We have a wall of pain over there. And I would like us to help each other by recognising that we're not alone. By voicing our fears, take your post-it notes out, write down one of those imposter syndrome or inner critic criticisms that you have had on repeat in your head, either now or at some point in your career. Write them down and later on go and put them on the wall. And I would love for us all to take a picture of that wall so that in the future, when your doubts start calling, take a look at that picture and realise you're not alone. So that's my first tip. My second tip is check your facts. We all believe that the sunflowers trap the sun. We all believe that the earth revolves around the sun. We all believe, well, maybe some of us believe that we were little a few years ago, but they're not true. And probably, absolutely, I'm not rubbish at maths. So check your facts. They matter. There was another imposter syndrome theme that I had going in my head for years in my earlier career, and that was because I'm an introvert and I'm shy, I was going to be a rubbish presenter, so I better not even try because it's all going to go horribly wrong. I avoided presenting for years. I dodged it. I flew under the radar. I gave somebody else the limelight. I found a reason why I couldn't be at that meeting, and I asked somebody else to do it. And I did that for years until I realised, actually, I can't get away with this. This is actually going to sabotage my career. I need to learn how to present. And so I did. I went out and I got some presentation skills, and the first few times I did it, it was really uncomfortable and I was probably a bit rubbish. But the more you do something, the easier it becomes. And that's what the key message in terms of my third tip is you just need to start doing it, whatever it is that you're afraid of, because it will become easier. I actually really like presenting now. Please ask me again. But it took me a while, and it took me to fill some gaps in my skills for me to build the confidence to be able to do it. So those are my 3 tips. You can overcome the inner critic in your head, and it's important that we do, because our worlds will be much bigger as you get more comfortable. Your comfort zone extends. Now I'm quite comfortable presenting. So what's the next thing? Maybe I'll be throwing myself off some rocks. The world will become a bigger place. Your life will become more exciting. You'll be able to take up opportunities that you might have previously stayed at home in the cave before. So let me end with a personal story. I was going to say I took this picture, but actually, Gavin, you replaced it with some other picture. But it was pretty much like this picture. And I had loads of these pictures. I think even I'd say I had hundreds of them, because this was my view. Every Monday morning, I would get up at 4 o'clock and I would get on a plane somewhere. Might be just the UK, might be Europe, might be Asia or the US, but I travelled every Monday for about 17 years because I live in Southern Ireland, very beautiful place to live, but it wasn't where my work was. So every Monday I had to get up and go somewhere else. Now, it might surprise you to hear that I've got 3 children and a grandson, but don't call me grandma. And during the period that they were little and teenagers, I just wasn't at home. Most of the time I wasn't at home. Now, I don't understand why I said I had. I hope that's not a Freudian slip. I have a wonderful stay-at-home husband. He worked from home and he filled the physical gap and the emotional gap for my children, but he couldn't assuage me of my mummy guilt. Have we got any working mums in the audience? Mummy guilt sound familiar? Yeah? It is incredibly crippling at times. And the worst times, of course, is when things go wrong. And they always go wrong. Like that phone call that I got when I just got off a plane at JFK and I was in a cab going to the office in New York. And my husband rang me and said my son had had an accident and was in the hospital. Like that text message that I got, I was just about to get up and speak on a stage, my favourite thing, in London years ago when my 19-year-old daughter texted me, "OMG, mummy, I'm pregnant." That presentation didn't go well. But things go wrong. And when they go wrong, and by the way, I feel really bad saying that. My grandson is the light of my life. Things did not go wrong. It just didn't seem like good news at the time. But when things went wrong, I beat myself up terribly. I told myself, you are a terrible mother. You've made terrible choices. Your children are going to be emotionally stunted. You're going to have bad relationships with them. They're going to blame you for everything that happens or goes wrong in their life going forward. Well, they didn't need to because I was already blaming myself anyway. But that particular inner critic went on for years and years and years. You know, the time I'm going to tell you about was 3 years ago when it was killed dead in one conversation. So that conversation was about Cassie, my middle daughter, who is now 19, and she's studying international law at Manchester. Now, Cassie has a number of medical issues. She's got a very severe peanut allergy, life-threatening. She's got other medical things wrong with her. Life isn't that easy for Cassie. And when we were talking about where she was going to go to university, she was offered a scholarship at Trinity. Now, Trinity is the best university in Ireland. It's in Dublin. It has a wonderful law school, no fees on a scholarship. We wanted her to go to Trinity. She wanted to go to Manchester. And she was determined. I didn't want her to go to Manchester for a different reason. I didn't want her to go to Manchester because I was frightened for her. She was 17. She was a year younger than you normally are when you go to university. And she was vulnerable, or in my eyes she was. And I kept saying to her, "Cassie, really? Why don't you just go up the road to Trinity? You'll be closer to home. You could come home at weekends." The look on her face was enough. She turned around to me and she said, "Mummy, you are the one who has always told us we must do what we want to do. We must step outside our comfort zone. So don't tell me now that what I want to do is to stay safe. I want to feel the fear and do it anyway." That killed my inner critic dead in terms of I was a bad mother, because here she was being brave. So we already established everybody suffers from imposter syndrome. And that is the rule. But you know what? With rules, there's always an exception, isn't there? And I think that there is an exception to this rule. But I don't think that any of us want to be the exception to this particular rule. because I think he thinks he's right all the time and that he knows everything. So let's not aspire to be like Donald Trump. Let's recognise that imposter syndrome is here to stay, and let's use those 3 tips to help our future selves step into our potential. So thank you again. It's been lovely. I am going to be around all night, so if you'd like to stay around and come and say hi, I would love to meet you. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I've got a website where I've got more than 100 videos, love making videos. And I also have a podcast called Her Career, Her Life, if you're into podcasts. So I would love to connect with you. Okay, thank you so much.